Hello everyone. How you all doing? My name is Asher and I'm here as part of the Divergents, a youth-led organization that aims to explore the stories of innovators and change makers worldwide.
Oh, one minute. For the past 8 years, we met all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds, whether through our interviews or workshops.
With us today is a Filipino author and writer, Ian Christopher Alfonso. For the past decade, he has been intensively researching thousands of years of stories to create his book, Dogs in Philippine History.
To add on that, Ian Christopher B. Alfonso is a supervising history researcher and officer in charge of the research, publication, and heraldry division of the National Historical Commission of the Philippines. He sits as an ex officio member of the National Committee on Historical Research, of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, and of the Philippine Postal Corporation Stamp Committee. He is also a board member of the Philippine Historical Association. He is a candidate for a Doctor of Philosophy in History at the University of Philippines, Diliman. He is the author of the book entitled Dogs in Philippine History. So, welcome, Sir Ian. We are very happy to have you with us today. May I ask, what began your interest and journey into history?
Yes, good afternoon. And my interest in historical research began when I was in the college. Actually, I actually dream of becoming a chemist, and unfortunately, I ended up taking a course related to history. So that was how I began in the field of historical research.
Thank you for sharing with us. And before we dive deeper into the main topic of our discussion, we'd like to know more about you on a personal level. Can you tell us what interests you besides writing and history?
Yes, when I have free time, I also design some posters, some books, no? So I'm also a graphic artist. So I manage several Facebook pages about Philippine history, and I am volunteering in designing the publicity materials being posted on those Facebook pages.
That's really fascinating. On a light note, do you have any pets yourself?
Yes, I do have two adopted dogs. Their name, I have a half Filipino dog and half we call it Aspin, Asong Pinoy here in our country, and he's half Aspin and half Terrier. His name is Sasuke, named after a character from Naruto, and the other one is a Shih Tzu. His name is Patron.
Whoa. Okay, that's really interesting. Now, I'm pretty sure what we're all here for today is about Sir Ian's or your book, Sir Ian, Dogs in the Philippines. So why don't we already move on to the core of our discussion and talk about that, your book and the extensive research behind it. So I'd like to ask you, what inspired you to write this book?
Not necessarily inspired, but I just noticed that along my research for the past about 18 years or 20 years, nearly 20 years, I often encountered some accounts and illustrations, historical photos with dogs. So 10 years ago, that was 2013, I decided to collect them, and I have this folder in my desktop, in my laptop, and whenever I encounter photos, illustrations, paintings, and materials, I always save them in that folder. And then I began writing about those photos and expanded them into historical essays. That's why it took me 10 years to compile and write comprehensively the Filipinos' encounters with dogs in the last 4,000 years. So that's how it began. by just collecting photos, images about dogs.
Why did it take you 10 years to write this book?
Yes, because this is quite new topic in Philippine history. So I double check my sources first because uh, because there's this seldom that you encounter sources about dogs. So whenever as I said earlier, whenever I encounter images and illustrations and accounts about dogs, I always save them. And then around 2014, 2015, or 2 years or 3 years after I started collected, then I started writing them. Ano? So little by little, I encounter more sources and began composing them into historical essays. It is composed of 28 chapters and comprise and the total number of pages is 720. So that's how it all that's how that is the composition of the book. No? So it's very difficult to start a topic that is never explored before.
The historical aspects of the book sound intriguing. How did you conduct research on the history of dogs in the Philippines? How did you verify your sources?
Yes, it is actually a multidisciplinary. When you say multidisciplinary, you you are also touching different disciplines, not only history. No, if you are familiar with the study of I mean the anthropology, no, the study of culture. So you need to understand why Filipinos love dogs and why dogs were accustomed, to wander around because our culture pampered the dogs. So we need to understand that anthropologically. That's the study of that study of culture, anthropology. And then I also consulted our archaeologists. No, they also unearthed remains of prehistoric dogs, meaning there are already dogs in the Philippines about 3,600 years ago. So I consulted their studies too also, no? And then I also consulted the artists, scholars of art history, because there are paintings, artwork, illustrations, no, depicting dogs. So we need to understand the story behind the artist's preference in incorporating dogs in their artworks. So it's quite multidisciplinary than historical. Of course, one of the basic rules in historical writing is to confirm your sources. So I trace the origin of the facts of the information through historical research. No, so meaning I consulted Spanish documents because we were conquered by the Spaniards for 330 years. So the need to visit the archives. When you say archives, here is this is the repository of the Spanish records about the Philippines.
Thank you, Sir Ian. It's really interesting as a fellow student who's interested in also studying anthropology as one of the possible courses in university. But concerning the project, now this project sounds like a monumental task. Did you have anyone helping you with this project?
Uh, I'm the only one writing the book, but of course, I also consulted my friends, my colleagues in the field. So thankfully, I have friends in the field of archaeology, anthropology, veterinary science, and also in the field of art history. So I think I consulted a number of people. So that's why I wrote in my acknowledgement pages, no, my acknowledgement page, uh, I wrote something like it is very the very difficult, the most difficult part in the process of writing this book is to compose the acknowledgements, no. So a lot of people helped me in writing this book in the past 10 years.
Amazing. And now, just to get to know your book a bit more and to give a bit of a summary. Could you tell us about how dogs first arrived in the Philippines and what their roles were in early society?
Yes, according to archaeologists and anthropologists, the earliest dogs in the Philippines were brought from mainland Asia via China, because when our ancestors, we call our ancestors as Austronesians, meaning they were the seafaring people who came from South China and then traveled to Formosa, which is now Taiwan, and then they traveled down to the Philippines. And here in the Philippines, they multiplied. They they explored the thousands of islands of the Philippines, and then they went downwards to Madagascar, to Indonesia, to Malaysia, and to the Pacific Islands, up to Hawaii, Easter Island, and New Zealand. And according to theories, the ancient this maritime people, this seafaring people we call Austronesians, our ancestors, brought with them dogs, hunting dogs. So the purpose of dogs in their journey to our islands in the Pacific and in the Southeast Asia to Madagascar were to provide, to assist our ancestors in looking for source of proteins. So the use of the dogs they brought into the Philippines was more on for hunting purposes.
That's so interesting. I think Asher has a question.
Adding on that, how can reading this book help the youth appreciate the diversity and heritage of dogs in the Philippines? What do you hope to achieve with this book?
Yes, one of the objectives of this book is to familiarize our people, especially the young ones like you, about our culture with dogs. No, so for me, it is incomplete. I mean, it is incomplete to understand Filipino culture without factoring in the role of dogs in our society and even in our life. So through dogs, we mirror our own culture and society. So more on familiarizing and acquainting our people about our historical and cultural encounters with dogs, which trace back to 4,000 years, no, nearly 4,000 years.
This book seems to tackle important issues regarding dog welfare in the Philippines. What are some of the challenges and opportunities for dog welfare and protection in the Philippines?
Actually, the book is did not tackle more about the government programs about dog welfare, but I do trace the history behind the animal welfare in the Philippines. So I just gave a glimpse of the long history of animal welfare in general in the Philippines, like um, culturally Filipinos adopt dogs. We have actually a vocabulary, a word for adopting dogs, and that is perero. No? So a lot of people, a lot of Filipinos no longer know that I don't know that word exists. So I reintroduced the word recorded in 1887 or 1889. So, and then during the American period, when we were conquered by the Americans, they introduced the animal adoption, the animal welfare, and the connection of animal welfare with the campaign of the Spanish and American government against rabies, no, the rabies virus, since it was discovered in the Philippines in 1800, no, 1800. So it is quite um, uh, difficult to Filipinos to see dogs being killed during the Spanish period, because that was the only default by the Spanish government, and even by the American government, to eradicate the rabies virus in the Philippines before the introduction of anti-rabies vaccine in 1910. So the animal welfare and the quest of the Philippine government since the Spanish period against rabies are interconnected. So that's, I think, my contribution, the book's contribution in the history of animal welfare in the Philippines. And of course, how Filipinos will will accustom themselves to the existing laws about animal welfare, and especially the anti-rabies law in the Philippines, no? Because Filipinos are accustomed to wandering dogs. The Filipinos prefer not to leash or to put in cage the dogs. So dogs in the Philippines wander around, in the neighborhood. So it is actually, culture is actually a factor in the combat, the government's combat against the the rabies problem in the Philippines.
All right. So I think we're gonna have a guest question by Anand. I believe he has a question to actually ask our guest over here.
Hey, Ian, good to see that you're working on a book which is covering about the history of dogs in Philippines. I mean, there is one question which is a bit controversial though, but I would like to definitely raise since you're writing a book on this subject. You are aware of the highlands of northern Luzon, the Cordillera region of Philippines.
Yes, Mr.
The
Anand.
problem out there, you know what the problem that I'm trying to ask you? Are you, and
Yes.
since you mentioned animal welfare, since you mentioned
Mhm.
animal welfare, is
Yes.
that topic covered out there on why they should not consume it?
Yes, actually, the 1998 Animal Welfare Act of the Philippines um, exempt the Cordilleran and other Philippine cultures consuming dogs. So it is illegal in the Philippines to kill arbitrarily or to consume dog meat in the Philippines. But the law explicitly says that it is prohibited if the killing of dog is not culturally or religiously done. So there is an exemption in consuming dog meat in the Philippines, but for cultural and religious purposes. But if it is only consumed just for fun or for regular meals, it is prohibited in the Philippines. But I'm pretty the book actually contextualized this dog eating culture in the Philippines, especially in the Cordilleras, because during the American period, the Americans and the other Europeans, no, the Westerners, actually romanticize that dog consuming in the Philippines, the dog meat eating in the Philippines as barbaric, just of course, just for them to emphasize that we Filipinos are uncivilized, barbaric, backwards. So we need to contextualize that culture. And my conclusion, no, and also this is also the views of the anthropologists and other ethnographers in the Philippines, both foreign and Filipino, that it has something to do with the belief that dogs can communicate with the deities, and dogs actually, for them, can mediate with the high spirits to keep the community or a family member from harm and from sickness. So that's the motivation why they consume dogs, no? So more on religious aspect.
Now, just to add a, an addition to what you're thinking about this whole subject, India, we have the northeastern part of the country, which is more has got more the looks the looks of the people are more towards the Chinese or the Mongoloid culture. If you look at the northeast part of India, which is on the high hills, so one of the state there is called as Manipur. There is a tradition of consuming dog meat there, and especially it is offered to the newly wed son-in-law when he comes for the first time to the house. It's supposed to be a delicacy. Now, I see there are a lot of things which are like the cultures between the northeast part of India and especially the southeast part of Asia has got a lot of thought processes which are very much aligned and very much which goes in sync with those cultures. So are you also bringing an aspect of how different cultures also treat dogs as part of their this thing, or is it only focused to Philippines?
Yes, I wish I have the material time to include also a comparative study between between a particular culture outside the Philippines and the Philippines, no. But the book exclusively tackled only the history and cultural aspects, about the dogs in the Philippines. But I want to emphasize also the view that in northern India, I think this is the part of India bordering Himalayas, no, meaning the upland territories of India. Actually, there's some. I mean, there's the Cordilleran people. They actually live in the highlands of North Luzon. So there's also a belief that when you eat dog meat, it can ease the cold weather in the North Luzon, no. So I think it's quite similar to India, no, because of the temperature, the climate in the uplands. So they believe it can help them, no, ease the cold weather in the uplands.
Yes. And to what extent do you understand that the Filipino culture and the Indian culture has a lot of similarities? Do you know the word Tagalog is derived from an Sanskrit word?
Although this is not part of the topic, but I love to answer that. No, actually, we have a number of scholars studying the cultural relationship between the Philippines and India, and surprisingly, there are a number of similarities, no, between the Philippines and India, because of our proximity with Indonesia, because Indonesia was the catalyst, no, in introducing Indian culture to Southeast Asia, not necessarily India directly influencing the Philippines. No, it was through Indonesia that we were influenced by the Indian culture. Like for example, our language. No, you are correct. We have hundreds of languages in the Philippines, and if you analyze the vocabularies of Philippine languages, especially our national language, Filipino, based in Tagalog, there are a lot of Sanskrit loan words. Like for example, our word for teacher, guro, no, it's from the Indian word guru, no, and then our word for love, mahal, no, the diwata, no, deity from Devata of India, and even our ancient writing system, no, we call it baybayin. It is actually derived from Devanagari, from the Asokan language, Asokan alphabet of India.
Brahmi. It's called Brahmi.
Yes. And then our epics, no, the scholars of literature in the Philippines actually trace some influences to India's Mahabharata, Ramayana. So we need to strengthen further the community, the contact, no, the cultural discussion and exchanges between India and the Philippines. And there are already studies and works that we can start with, no, and then let's dig deeper, in studying our relationships.
Those are some really good questions from our guest, interviewer, Anand. So thank you, Anand, for those questions to our guest Ian. And moving back onto the topic, what aside from getting a copy of the book, what are other ways people can help you in your cause?
I'm inviting the viewers of this conversation to kindly like and follow the Facebook page Dogs in Philippine History. I actually set up that Facebook page to engage people and to reach more Filipinos to to know more about the history and culture with dogs, no, our culture, our historical and cultural encounters, and the understand ourselves, no, more deeper through dogs. So every day I make it a point to upload or to share images, historical images, and information from my book, so that more people will get to know the content of the book. No, I'm not particular about the marketing of the book, but I'm after the democratizing the information from my book through everyday postings on that Facebook page.
What are your future plans about this book? Are you planning any follow-up events?
Yes, actually, it is not yet available in the market, no. And thank you for your interest, no, in your interest in the book. And there will be a formal launching of the book on August 5. That's Saturday in Quezon City. It will be hosted by my agency, the National Historical Commission of the Philippines, and it will be held inside the Presidential Car Museum, no, the official museum of the Philippines, wherein you can see the cars of the Philippine presidents from the time of President Aguinaldo, no. So it will be held again at the Presidential Car Museum inside the Quezon Memorial Circle in Quezon City. It's at 2 p.m. and kindly visit or the Facebook page of the book, Dogs in Philippine History, for further details.
To wrap up, how about we discuss some interesting or surprising facts about dogs in the Philippines that you discovered during your research?
Okay, so actually there are lots of information, no, new information. Although it is not new, no, but I'm just reintroducing the facts, no, the information based on what I researched. Actually, what surprised me in my research about dogs was the dog war waged by the Spanish government in the 19th century. You know, when I say 19th century, it's 1800s. During the time the rabies virus was discovered in the Philippines in 1800, they actually implemented the mass killings of dogs, no, in the Philippines, and a lot of royal orders, no, I mean orders from the Spanish government to eradicate street dogs, no, and then they also impose ownership of one dog per household, no. So if the authorities saw your household owning more than one dog, the excess dogs will be killed, no, would be automatically killed. So this information were not discussed in Philippine history before, no. So I hope through this book we will be enlightened about this fact in history, that once upon a time we had that dark period, you know, in Philippine history. So I call it dark period because during that time, the only default action of the government was to eradicate street dogs, no, because Louis Pasteur, if you're familiar with Louis Pasteur, no, he discovered the anti-rabies vaccine only in the 1880s, or no, 1870s rather, no. So and then it would take time to reach that breakthrough to the Philippines in 1910. So come to think of it, a lot of dogs suffered because of the rabies. and we need to be responsible in taking care of our pooches, no, our dogs, no, so that our dogs will not catch up this virus, no, from other dogs. And we need to help also the government, especially in the Philippines, to the through dog adoption. No, let's give hope to a number of street dogs in the Philippines. As my book banners, no, every dog deserves a loving Filipino home.
Thank you, Sir Ian. Those are very interesting notes and facts about the history of dogs in the Philippines. And now, concerning the book, right? So if and the related topics, if someone wanted to follow in your footsteps and write a historical book about a specific topic, like for example, what you did with dogs, what advice would you give them as someone who has written a book on a historical topic?
Yes, I am actually encouraging, no, other people, or of course the scholars, to write also about the animal history in the Philippines, not only dogs. And I also encourage people to review my work, because it is a seminal work, meaning it's just it's a new thing, no, about Philippine history. So I welcome criticisms about what I wrote and my viewpoints. No, it through criticism, it will help us develop, no, or I mean, it will enhance further the discussion about the topic. And I am actually interested on documenting the dog adoption by our Filipino expatriates, especially in Saudi Arabia. I learned a lot from your parents, no, the how the Filipinos love adopting dogs in Saudi Arabia, because culturally we love dogs in household, no, and we carried it outside the country, especially in Saudi Arabia, where I think, according to your parents, there is this animal shelter in Saudi Arabia where Filipinos adopt dogs, and then because because of course there are instances our countrymen, no, our countrymen in Saudi will return to the Philippines, and they will actually arrange for the flight of the dogs adopted in Saudi. So that's a new thing to me, as a writer of this book. So hopefully there will be a volume 2 of the book or an expanded edition of the book, so that I can include also the story, your story there in Saudi Arabia, no, the Filipino story of dog adoption overseas.
That is very exciting. As a closing note, could you share your advice to the world, especially regarding the preservation and appreciation of our diverse heritage with the amazing dogs of the Philippines?
Yes. Again, I just want to introduce the motto, the working motto of my book. No, every dog deserves a loving Filipino home, and not only loving Filipino home. No, everyone, every culture in the world can also emphasize that love. No, because universally humanity loves dogs. No, I mean, it is not exclusive thing to Filipinos. So we need to encourage our fellow to look for animal shelters and give hope for these dogs rescued, or the dogs wandering around, no, in the neighborhood. So although my book is only limited in the about the Philippines, no, it's the thing is it's universal, no. It's a universal. We share this with humanity, our love with dogs. So hopefully we transcend that innate love of Filipinos with dogs.
All right. So once again, think you people, our audience, with some of your contact details if they ever want to learn more about you or your book? And also, will there be any way for people to purchase your book online?
Yes, they can email me at historicalaso at gmail.com. Email me or contact me through the Facebook page, Dogs and Philippine History. And there we posted instruction about how to purchase the book. It will be available on August 5 onwards. Like and share or follow the Facebook page for updates about the book.
All right, and I think with that, our interview has come to an end. Once again, thank you so much, Sir Ian, for coming here today. We really enjoyed hearing all about the dogs in the Philippines and your journey to write this amazing book. I personally cannot wait to possibly pick up the book if I ever head to the Philippines later this year, or even meet you in person. So thank you once again, Sir Ian. And also thank you to Anand for those questions. And I believe Miss Khan has something to say.
Yeah, I really do have something to say, Ian. By the end of this whole conversation, I think one takeaway that I'm taking is that every author should actually meet a group of children before releasing the book, because it will clarify your concepts more than anybody else. And I hope you're going to agree with me that this amazing group of kids has really raised up some interesting questions. And Perrin, I am missing a very important member in this whole conversation. It was about dogs, and as far as I know, Divergents do have a dog.
That is true. Both
Actually,
our families, my family and Lear's family, we both have dogs that came from Open Paws Jeddah.
yeah.
And where are they at the very moment? When they must be
Actually,
the guest of honor.
he has been here the whole time the whole time in the interview. He was on my lap while we were interviewing.
Oh, okay. Thank you for showing this to us. So we have our next guest, Matthew. Matthew, please open your camera. And meanwhile, wonderful interview, kids. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
Gia,
so
Thank you, Miss Khan.
much.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.